and welcome in to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow hosts and friends, Lino and Caelan. We have a very fun show for you guys because the NBA is back. We have all been watching an insane amount of basketball. It's one of the most exciting times of the year because we're trying to figure out who's in the rotation, who's playing well, who's disappointing. So there's a ton of basketball to talk about today, and that will be the bulk of the episode. We'll start with some news and notes just to get a couple things out of the way. Since our last episode, it was right before the regular season. We had a lot of extensions, like rookie scale extensions happen. So Moses Moody got a deal done with the Warriors. Trey Murphy III got an extension with the Pels. Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün got extensions, so Houston took care of their guys. Jalen Suggs got one, Corey Kispert, Jalen Johnson, and then on the veteran extension side, Aaron Gordon and Rudy Gobert got extensions as well. So a lot of guys got paid. I think most of the contracts were pretty reasonable. The Şengün one felt really like a discount. And the only one that didn't happen that was slightly surprising was Jonathan Kuminga, but that'll be fun to monitor going into the offseason to see what happens there. And then, of course, with any NBA season, injuries come as well. So a couple injuries to watch. So far, Paul George and Joel Embiid have not played a game yet, which is obviously concerning for the Sixers. They're going to need to get those guys on the court at some point. Poor Maxey is trying to carry the whole team right now, which I feel like could be a theme for the season. We'll see. And then, of course, it's not an NBA season without a Kawhi Leonard injury. Wishing him well. Hope he's able to come back soon. But same thing, James Harden's having to create a lot of offense, currently leading the league in turnovers because there's not a lot going on out there other than him and Norm Powell. Another concerning injury is Chris Middleton has yet to play. He's coming off double ankle surgery. That's always tough. And DeJounte Murray was our first kind of in-game injury of the season. I believe he fractured his left hand, and I think they said 4 to 6 weeks on that. So it's a big blow for the Pels. That was their offseason acquisition they were excited about. So as always, we'll kind of keep you guys updated on what's going on with all the different injuries. But hopefully, last season, at least regular season was pretty healthy. A lot of guys played 60, 70 plus games. So hopefully there will be more of that this season. But with all that being said, we can finally get into some games. We're mostly just excited to talk hoops. We're going to tell you guys kind of what we've been seeing, what we're looking forward to going on, and just kind of all the fun we've been having with this awesome league being back. So, Caelan, I want to throw it to you first. Wherever you want to take it, specific game, specific team, what have you been enjoying lately?
Okay, so full disclosure, if you haven't heard me say this in the past, especially at the start of a season, I like to kind of tap into like the middling teams to the bad teams because, I just don't like to necessarily watch a lot of the film of teams that everyone agrees is really good because I feel like there's not a lot to be learned. So at the start of the season, yeah, I definitely tapped into a couple of interesting teams. I feel like we can start amazingly with the Charlotte Hornets, who are probably the most interesting bad team in basketball this year. They're not very good, but they do have a lot of guys that I've liked. LaMelo Ball has to be at the top of that list. He started this season off. He's been a dynamo. He was really fun to watch in that Hawks game as the reserves. Every time the reserves came in, they would lose all the ground that LaMelo gained. And he would just come in and get it all back. He hit 9 threes in that game. He hit like 3 of the little one-legged runners / leaners. He's really good at those threes. And LaMelo is really a guy, if he hits a corner 3 and then he comes down and he hits a 3 on the wing, you now have to guard him at 30 feet because he can't hit 30-footers once his rhythm has gotten going. So that was fun to see. They don't have their big guy Mark Williams back, so I think that's going to just limit them because he is their big body and he's how they grab a lot of rebounds and play more physical. So they're going to need him back. Trey Mann has been really fun, like a throwback Iverson type player. He's been really fun. But they just need more guys. Vasily Micic, I don't know if you guys saw my I was tweeting about Vasily Micic. He is such a great theoretical player. He's super talented. He's comfortable shooting the 3 ball. He can kind of do some of that, European magic stuff with the fancy passing and all that. But I think the biggest thing with him is he's not comfortable. And, I can't remember if it's his second or third year in the NBA, came over from Europe. But he needs to figure it out soon. He had another terrible game against Miami. I'm sure you guys saw the few Micic minutes that were not very good. Um, but just watching that Miami game, I know you guys did. What did you guys see from Charlotte? That was interesting, and you can talk about definitely what you saw from Miami as well in that game.
Yeah, so I actually ended up watching the Hawks and Charlotte game as
Oh,
well,
dope,
and
dope.
yeah, I thought it was a good game, very interesting game for two teams that I think we'd written off, and we'll get into my overreactions later. But I think these teams, generally speaking, are better than we gave them credit for, and that I think they're starting to. I think there's some really interesting aspects to their season that are going forward. With the Hornets, I agree. LaMelo Ball, he's such an interesting player because he's a bit of a wild card when it comes to how he's so effective on the offensive end. Like when I watch it, the old grumpy man basketball person inside of me is like, ugh, I don't like the way this looks. But then at the same time, I'm like, this is like electric. Like the way he plays basketball is electric and it's effective and it gets his team going. And they always, like you said, the momentum just always shifts when he's on the floor. And so that's just such a special talent to have. And honestly, I think the guys that they have around him in Trey Mann and even some of their veteran players like Seth Curry and Grant Williams, like they're not the most, they're not exactly going to win you ball games, but having those mature basketball players on the floor with them, like that matters. And Grant
Hey,
Williams is
watch
not
him
like,
out. Grant Williams hit that game-winning three against the Rockets to complete their
yeah,
comeback. That was a good shot
he's
too.
good. Like I feel like he got a bad rap from, maybe being a part of the reason why the Celtics lost to us in the conference finals and then getting shipped to Charlotte as a punishment. But he's like a solid player and he's like a very consistent player. And I think that matters for a team full of young guys like this. I agree, them getting Mark Williams back. And I think, Miller went out during one of
Yeah.
our games and
Mm-hmm.
having those guys back, this team is going to be very interesting to watch moving forward. At the same time, the Hawks are also an interesting team to me, and watching them play the Hornets, and a lot of the conversation online about Trae Young gets maybe over nuanced, but I thought this game was a good reminder that at the end of the day, he's just a really good
Dude,
basketball player.
he's really good.
This guy can freaking hoop. Like that's it. It's like,
Yeah.
whatever you want to say about the offense and defense and, his size, like the guy is good at basketball. And the Dyson Daniels pickup might look like a genius move by the front office at the end of the season. So we'll see how things go for both of these teams. But Micah, what have you seen from the Hornets so far?
Yeah, the Hornets they're a fun team because like Caelan was alluding to, they're certainly not good right now, but
No.
all the pieces are in place for them to be solid, I think, like on some nights, and then potentially depending on how the young guys develop, be good. LaMelo's been awesome to start the year, and Brendan Miller looked great to start, and then unfortunately had that hip injury, so that'll be a big part of it. But I think they're in a tough spot because they have this new head coach in Charles Lee, who I liked his energy. I like a lot of like how the team looks based on what he's running on both sides of the ball. But they also, the way to them becoming a like good team is probably the young guys develop, but playing the young guys to develop them right now is going to make them a bad team. So I know that has to be a tough spot as a first year head coach because like Tijon Salon is not a positive NBA player right now, but you're gonna need him. Probably it's the second half of this year, definitely next year. So you kind of have to give him minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But as a head coach, like, okay, Cody Martin would be a better player to have out there right now. So it's like that's just got to be tough for Charles Lee. So that'll be interesting to watch. I think with any of these young teams, even a team like Houston, it's like, how much are you playing Cam Whitmore over Dylan Brooks or whatever the example is. That's a tough situation, especially because we know these coaches, like you can be on a bad team and for whatever reason, if the front office decides you were a little too bad, they'll still cut you. Like you'll get fired. So it's a tough spot to be as a head coach. And on LaMelo specifically, he is like he's so unique. He's just truly a one-of-one kind of talent because he has skills that do not often go together in good and bad ways. So this guy is like a very, very high level passer, like right below like the Luka genius tier.
Mm-hmm.
And he has incredible court mapping. He can throw pretty much every pass in the book. But to me, usually with those kind of like savants on offense, like very high level decision making comes with that, and that doesn't always happen with LaMelo. I think he kind of has like this back and forth where the exciting flashy play is kind of like speaking to him like the devil on his right shoulder, when
Inside of
like
his
just
two
the
wolves.
chest pass is probably there. And I think that's tough on him and his team. And I think he kind of has a hard time fluctuating between like, okay, I can be this like conservative version of myself that can really produce productive offense, but maybe the ceiling isn't there. Or I can take this step back one-legged three, and if I hit three in a row, now the building's going crazy. We might blow this team out. So it's fun to watch LaMelo kind of go through all that. He's shooting 42% from three right now on incredibly difficult attempts, so that's super impressive. But to me, in the Heat game, the most impressive aspect of his whole game was his floaters. I think that, he's never been good at finishing at the rim. He's only shooting 46% at the rim right now. Of course, just 3 games. But the floater game for him, he put a shoulder into a couple defenders, got the bump, and then went into the floater. He's shooting 62% in that range right now. So I think as long as that continues to be a consistent place where he can hurt teams, if he combines that with the passing and the threes, I think he could be in for a huge year.
Yeah, exciting. Do you want to walk back your Cade over LaMelo take, or you still
No,
hold on to
because
that?
Cade has looked
Man,
awesome.
dude, it looks freaking sick, man.
Let's talk about the
Let's
Pistons.
go there. Here we go. So
the Pistons opener was against the Indiana Pacers. It was a very exciting game, back and forth. Halliburton struggled, and Cade really came out and played a great game, and it was fun to see how they're kind of supplementing all these players. But to me, Cade, oh man, I'm excited. Obviously, the shot has to fall. You have to make your shots. He had kind of an inconsistent game against Boston, but Detroit was still in that one. But to me, Cade's rhythm and timing in the pick and roll looks even more poised so far this season. And I think my hope is that dealing with that cramped spacing that he had to last year, now that he has just like average spacing, you can really see how comfortable he is moving around, trapping the defender behind him, throwing the lob to Duran if it's there, pulling up in the mid-range. To me, it's a very reminiscent of a very popular athlete right now, Cam Ward, the University of Miami's quarterback. And people make all these jokes about how calm he is in the pocket, but that also, it feels like that for Cade right now in the pick and roll. Like he's just very easily getting to his spots. Seems like he really has adjusted. Like he knows how big he is. He knows how strong he is. And he's really just using his body control to put defenders in a really tough spot. And I don't know if you guys caught the third quarter of Detroit and Indiana, but Cade got hot, and man, he was giving them buckets in every kind of way. I mean, he was getting to the mid-range, the threes, he was getting to the basket. It was really, I mean, I've been following Cade since he was in high school and then Oklahoma State, so I'm a huge fan. And to see him really start to put stuff together right now is super exciting. And it's just nice that he finally has an actual team around him.
What year is
just
this for
the
Cade?
big vets. Is this year, I think, 4 now?
Okay.
But one of those seasons he was pretty much out the whole.
Yeah, he had I think it was
Okay.
Was it microfractures in his shin, something like that. So yeah, he hasn't gotten maybe a full run of seasons, but yeah, it's been very, very exciting to see his development. Have you guys caught any Detroit so far?
I caught the fourth quarter of Detroit versus the Celtics because I was just perusing through League Pass and I said, "What the hell?" The Pistons are beating the Celtics.
Yeah.
That didn't last terribly long, or as long as they needed to, but that team is just constructed in a way that makes a lot more sense. Like looking at it, there's obviously still some flaws and some there's still a general lack of overall talent, but they've got talent in the right places where they need it. And so guys like Malik Beasley coming in there and actually being able to be viable from the 3-point line. Tim Hardaway Jr. isn't exactly shooting very well yet, but I think he will get around to shooting better. And guys like Jaden Ivey actually getting a chance to get all the minutes that he really needs under a coach that understands his talents, that's going to matter for them. And they are, 0-3 right now or something of that nature, but it is like the most compelling 0-3 I've seen so far. And I think they actually will start winning games, as I think really it comes down to closing games out. Like that Celtics game was really theirs or at least they had a shot at it through the very last seconds. It's just a matter of, you're playing a championship caliber team that at the end of the game just knows how to win. And the Pistons just haven't been in scenarios like that very long. So once they get those things figured out, this team is going to be exciting. Cade is playing his best brand of basketball right now, and super excited for him. And I think this is going to be a situation where they are not as miserable to watch as they were in previous seasons.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like last year, I feel like they won a couple games early and we got excited. And then, of course, it fell apart. This year, it's like they haven't won, but it almost feels more legitimate because it's like they're playing real basketball. It just hasn't quite, converted.
Yeah,
into
and Noah Sar
actual
Thompson
wins.
either. So,
Yeah.
him coming back and defensively being
Yeah, I
better
haven't
there.
gotten a chance to watch this team at all. Although I did start to think that um I was hearing Kate Cunningham needs space so often it was starting to feel like excuse making. But it is good to see that kind of coming to fruition. The team does make so much more sense. It's not even funny. They got some real players on there. It's good to see Isaiah Stewart like fall back into a role that makes more sense to him. Like they
Yeah.
have been using the crap out of him like way too much. He's a decent player, but it's good to see he only shot 1 3. Like they were like relying on his 3-point shooting because they didn't have any shooters. So that's good to see that this team should definitely be better. It's good to see that they just make a lot more sense, and they got real players. Tobias Harris on there, so that's good. Good for the Pistons, man.
Definitely. And Duran, to me, Jalen Duran, their center, is a big swing piece for their future because he's like built like a superhero. Like the close-ups of him are like it looks like David Robinson. So but the defense hasn't totally come together. But JB Bickerstaff is a really good coach, especially defensively. So I think he'll put him in position to succeed. I've liked his activity on the glass so far this season. I think he could be a special kind of rebounder. So, and other than that, it just needs to set good screens and dive. And, he's shown some playmaking. So Duran's definitely a big swing piece for them. And like Lino mentioned, Asar, hopefully that'll be kind of their core 3 young guys that they build around going in the future. And maybe Jaden Ivey can get there as well and give them a 4th guy. But Lino, has there been a team you're kind of excited to talk about in the early goings, or anyone you've that's kind of stood out to you so far?
I think we've honestly covered a lot of the teams that I was thinking about. I did want to just shout out the Bulls for looking a lot more competent than I thought they'd be this season. Zach LaVine obviously looks amazing through the first few games. He's shooting like crazy, but the way they've been able to spread the ball around and bring out the most out of guys that they're probably leaning too much on, like I don't know how much you can depend on Kobe White 35-point games, but the fact that you can get Kobe White 35-point games is something. And Vucevic is such an interesting player to watch. Watching them beat the Bucks this week was so interesting because Vuce, sometimes when I look at him, I'm like, why is this a valuable basketball player? And I never really watched a ton of his games, but just kind of the few games I would catch with him, and they were all usually off nights, I'd be like, this guy does not, he seems kind of washed. Like, what's the deal here? But then there's other times where I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I see why people definitely, look at this guy and think he can bring some wins to our team. And I just feel like the trade is not as disastrous as it felt when they originally made it. And I think they could make something out of this season, out of that like 8 seed to 10 seed range. I think that play-in tournament could be really anybody's ball game. Whereas it kind of felt like there was a distinct cutoff at like 8 or 9 and then a huge drop off. I think there's going to be a lot more competition to get into the last few spots of the playoffs. So, yeah, I think another team that really interested me so far this season has been the Orlando Magic. I unfortunately had to face them with our team, the Heat, in the opening game, and they really torched us on the back half. And I think, they still have some questions around their roster that needs answering, but ultimately, I feel like Paolo Banchero is going to have an incredible season. His game is just insane. Like, that guy's a real hooper. He's taking advantage of every disadvantage on the floor. He is getting their offense going. He's really locked in on the defensive end, and it's crazy. I do feel like he is a bit underrated, or at least. And sometimes this is a good thing. Sometimes it's nice to just not be in the spotlight and just be a good ass basketball player. But I feel like he's not exactly in the conversations that he should be in. And I think this season will get him there, especially as someone who, what was he? Was he like a first round draft, like a first pick in the draft
First
his year?
overall.
Yeah. It's like, this is crazy. He's like really, really good. And he's just not in those conversations where he needs to be, but he's carrying that Magic team to a level that I don't think they'd be able to get to without him. Other guys on that team have really been able to step up. Franz Wagner, he's, I think, looking a lot better than he was last year, and that's going to be important for them. But overall, I think they're going to have an exciting season. They beat us. I think they lost to the Grizzlies, but that game, I think, was closer than it seemed. And I think they're just going to have a really solid season moving forward. Have you been able to catch any of the Magic games so far, Micah?
Yeah, well, of course, I saw them destroy us. I wish I didn't catch that one, but yeah, what you said about Paolo, I was so impressed with him, man. Like, Paolo, to me, and this is gonna sound more like a slight than I mean for it to, but the best version of him is like when he remembers how big he is. Like, he can
Mm-hmm.
definitely get to the mid range and the step backs, but like when he is looking for a mismatch every single possession, which is what he did against Miami, he's so hard to deal with. Because I mean, and I thought Jamal Mosley's offense was so smart. They started every set with a guard screening for Paolo. Now against Miami, there's a lot of good options to attack as far as mismatches, and obviously you don't want to go at Bam or Jimmy. But I mean, Haywood Highsmith's undersized, but he's a good defender, and Paolo is just running through him. And he was just being very intentional about attacking mismatches, sealing guys in the post, getting easy layups. And then, of course, Paolo's always been an above average passer for his position. So anytime too much help came his way, he was making the right read. In the Heat game, the three ball was falling, which that just gives a whole nother dimension to how good he is. So yeah, Paolo, I could not be more impressed with him. He had a great playoffs, for his first playoff. So yeah, all the stock indicators are pointing straight up for Paolo Banchero. He has looked awesome. Caelan, do you have any Paolo or Magic thoughts in general?
I haven't gotten a chance to watch this team yet. My wife dragged me to a freaking Halloween party last night, so I didn't get a chance to watch the Magic Grizz game. That's the really game I wanted to catch. They played the Nets before that. I was not going to watch that game at all.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I just seen some clips. Paolo definitely looks dominant. Looks like he's even more of a physical force. That's good. Franz Wagner took 10 threes last night. That's good to see. Hit 4 of them. So, that's pretty good. But yeah, not too many Magic thoughts just yet. But definitely a team I'm going to be looking at for sure.
Yeah, the defense is as advertised. I mean, that defense was tenacious.
Yeah.
Lino, did you have any thoughts about the KCP Jalen Suggs backcourt, kind of how that looked for him?
I think it's going to work pretty well for them moving forward. I didn't have any particular notes on them. I think most of my focus was just watching Paolo and being like, this guy freaking rocks.
Yeah.
But I always like the KCP pickup. I think there's a good balance in that backcourt, and that they can be very diverse with how they play basketball moving forward. But were you having any initial first impressions with KCP addition to this roster?
Yeah, I mean, I just have a lot of fear for opposing backcourts because that defense is ridiculous.
Yeah.
To me, like, Rozier has one of the better handles, like, among guards in the East, and Suggs was able to pick him up full court, forced him into a turnover. Like, I mean, we know what kind of defender Suggs is, but the three ball was also falling. He was, making good cuts off ball. And I think the KCP pickup, the only people that had a problem with it were ones that just wanted them to get a little more creation, somebody that can
Mhm.
play make a little bit more. But Paolo and Franz have been so good at that early, and they'll be asked to do a lot of it. But as long as they're up for that challenge, I think what KCP brings is a defender and then just a knockdown shooter from all areas of the court. It'll do a lot. And then it allows their depth to do more. Anthony Black has had some good moments and some bad moments. I think he has like the best net rating on the team right now. And, having KCP allows him not to have to be the starter and have to play too many minutes. He can just flourish in his role. And, I think that'll be really beneficial for him and the team at large.
Can I just say about KCP, and this is not even hate at all, okay? But Magic fans, get ready, okay? Last night, it was a classic KCP game. 28 minutes, 3 points, didn't do a goddamn thing. That's a classic KCP. I watched this guy. He's a good player. I like him, but he has a lot of 28 minutes game, but he don't do it. He even played. KCP, he played last night. That's crazy. I didn't even see him out there. He does that a lot. They had a weird game last night. I didn't get a chance to catch it, but Jalen Suggs led the team in field goal attempts. That's strange. I don't think that's a recipe for many wins. So they got to clean that up. Jalen Suggs, strange play. He took 13 threes. Is that really who he is? Is he a 13-3 type player?
I don't think so.
In a game, he took 13?
13, 5 for 13.
He took 13, 5 for 13 against the Grizz.
Good Lord.
Which, lean, by the way, in a game the Grizz won by 13 points, Zach Edey a minus 12. How did he do that? Why are you so terrible?
I don't know, man. He only played 13 minutes, too. So he was just very vicious.
Siphoning points from his team every minute he played.
Hey, Jay Huff is the truth, apparently. That's who we should have been watching this whole
time. It looks good.
It's crazy. But Jay Huff looks good out there, which maybe, I don't know. I know we're just kind of flowing through things, but the Grizzlies guys, I'm locked in on the Grizzlies. I like the way they're playing basketball right now. And
really?
They are playing everybody, it feels like. I think they have like 11 players playing over 15 minutes. It's crazy. They just go super deep into the bench. But then you watch guys like Jay Huff. He's had some really solid games for them. They've been very versatile shooting, and he's been a lob threat with Ja. Like he seems. He's got 18 points.
Jay Huff can jump over a phone book.
Hey, I watched him do it. He caught a lob from Ja Morant.
I would say Jay Huff looking good probably is more about how good Ja Morant is in the pick and roll than anything else.
And you guys can say that, but when you need your center to make an open three,
he can
been doing it for the past 3 games. And you know who? I think wasn't he on like a 2-way with the Nuggets or something? And I'm pretty sure they would like to have some good basketball players.
The point. He's on a 2-way. Yeah. Scottie Pippen Jr., who is their backup point guard and plays a lot of minutes. Like he does a lot of stuff. He was on a 2-way. Now he's playing.
11 points and 12 assists from Scottie Pippen Jr. Is all I'm saying, guys.
That's fine at the start of a season, whatever. But I think I might have overestimated this team. I mean, they're still hurt. They're missing Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson. Those are 2 good players that are gonna, get rid of some, I don't know, Jake LaRavia minutes. But I don't know, man. This team is playing a lot of like youngish guys that are not exactly world beaters, and I just don't know about this roster. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I kind of get that, Caelan, because I was watching the fourth quarter of Memphis and Utah the other day, and they took it, I want to say down, it was a close game, and I think they took it all the way down to, Taylor Jenkins took it down to like 4 minutes left before he put Ja back in. And prior to that, like the whole stretch was like, okay, when's Ja coming back in? Like it looks, and Desmond Bane's a good player. Marcus Smart was out there as well, but it's like, okay, if Ja's not in there to get everybody else where they need to be, it can get rough. And that's against Utah, the worst defense in the league last year, and probably not going to be much better this year. So to me, this feels like if things go well, Ja's going to end up like 5th on MVP ballots. And if they don't go well, Ja's probably going to get injured because they really rely on him. So, but Triple J is just coming back. I mean, he only played a little bit last night. So obviously that's like, very high caliber NBA player. So that'll help everybody kind of slot into a more natural role. But yeah, the injuries plus some of the young guys being relied on so heavily does give me a little concern about Memphis being like a top 5 seed.
And they don't have a center.
You guys don't believe. We'll see what happens. That Zach Edey, Jay Huff depth right there is going to be a game changer for them.
Oh
Not
man.
in a derogatory way that you guys probably think it is.
Which I guess Brandon Clark's their like actual starting center, but that that's he's good, but post Achilles hasn't been what he was early in his career. So and he's really a power forward, So him and Triple J kind of you're starting 2 4s instead of 1 5, and I think we're kind of seeing that like a team with New Orleans too. It's just interesting these teams that don't have true centers really up and down the roster that are ready. Obviously Edie could be a good contributor eventually, but right now the game looks a little fast for him.
Yeah.
Also,
Guys, have you
can other teams guard Santi Aldama? No one's guarding him. The Jazz did not guard him. He went crazy again last night. You guys gotta guard him. He can hit open threes, guys. We're just letting Santi
I
Aldama.
like him. He's good. He's
He's okay.
He's solid. To me, he brings like not I wouldn't say a better version, but similar qualities that Kyle Anderson brought Memphis. Just like makes the right extra pass, can knock down
Yeah.
Santi can knock down an open three. Kyle Anderson,
Yeah, I would say he's probably better than Kyle Anderson, I'll say.
yeah, but a little less defense probably than Anderson. But anyway, I like him as a connector. Lino and I were texting about, I think it was a Memphis Miami preseason game, and we were like, who we hope Nikola Jovic becomes? Santi Aldama. Like seeing them on the court together, it's like I like this kind of connector four. So he's had a good start to the year.
It's starting to pan out. Okay, so you guys are out on the Grizzlies. I'll keep that in mind. You guys have sold their season. You don't believe in the Zach Edey experiment. I wanted to ask you guys: have you guys watched any of the Kings games so far this season?
Yes,
Obviously,
I think I've watched 2
they
Kings games actually.
I think I've seen up to 2 at this point. And
Yeah.
I am really interested in the Kings, and I don't know if it's good, like for good reasons or bad reasons. It's like they can really stay in games where they always have, but I have so many questions about what the plan is for this team. They are not particularly big, but they're also not as fast as I felt like they used to be. And so if you're not, small and fast or big and slow, being small and slow, you just look like the Miami Heat last year, and it's just not great. But at the same time, I don't know how I feel about DeRozan and how effective that's been so far for them this season. Obviously, it's only been a few games, but I'm not exactly sure how I can project how valuable he is to winning. And then something that Caelan brought up the other day is that these guys play like 6 basketball players. Like they don't have a roster. Like at least like the Grizzlies, they have like serviceable role players from 1 through 11 or 12. You put a lot of weight on these role players, but they don't even have that in the Kings. Like they don't have guys they can go to after 6 or 7. And it's really bizarre because DeRozan's not exactly young and spry. Asking him to play 40 minutes a game is kind of crazy. But what are y'all's thoughts on the Kings so far and the games that we've got to watch them in, and what you think, the rest of the season is waiting for them?
Yeah, so I watched the Kings play the Timberwolves, and I watched them play the Lakers, and a tough start for that team because like you mentioned, they are short on depth, and I think dropping those 2 close games. I mean, both of those games kind of could have been had by Sacramento. This team at some point is going to sustain an injury, and if it's to anybody other than, if it's to anybody other than Sabonis, they just plug in Malik Monk and they just probably extend some minutes for the starters who are already in the high 30s, and they just make it work. They have plenty of scoring. If Sabonis got hurt, that would be bad. They only have really Alex Lynn to kind of plug. They probably would try and lean on Trey Lyles. If Trey Lyles could hit his threes consistently, he would be a fine reserve. Probably a player I'd like. But he just misses too many open shots, and he doesn't give you enough of the actual big man stuff to make that okay. So yeah, they could potentially be in trouble. Listen, I don't envy teams that like have to play them any given night. They're going to be a handful. They score a ton of points. Their big 3. I mean, really, their first 6, they all can score the ball. Kevin Huerter's really the only guy I don't really like too much, but I mean, their defense is taking a step back. I think this team's just probably about the same where they were last year. I think, Micah, what you have, like 7th seed? That's probably about where they'll finish, to be honest. What do you think, Micah?
Yeah, it's interesting to me right now. Their shot diet has been the most interesting to watch. I watched the Minnesota Kings game as well,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, obviously with DeMar, your mid range attempts are going to go up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's his specialty. But Fox likes to operate there. You know, Sabonis will take the occasional pick and pop. You know, Monk
Malik.
will get into pull ups,
Mm-hmm.
and so that all adds up into the team taking the most mid range attempts. You know, per shot right now in the entire league is the
Oh.
Sacramento Kings.
Oh, wow.
And that's so different from just a few years ago when they were like running like crazy, number one, number two offense in the league, just getting
Mm-hmm.
up a bunch of threes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, like, DeMar's a good player. I think he will ultimately make them better. But right now, it does seem like they're having just a slight identity crisis on offense about where they want to go, how they want to attack, because it's a lot of mid range right now. And DeMar's awesome to have like end of a shot clock, late game, but I think they need to find a way to kind of get back to their old selves for like 80% of possessions, and then maybe like 20% you would just let DeMar dance and, you know, get to some efficient mid-range shots. I mean, DeMar's good at them, but leading the league in mid-range it's a little scary, especially because they're 28th in attempts at the rim. I mean, you have Fox and Sabonis, like those guys should be just attacking the basket constantly. So to be almost dead last at the rim and, you know, number one in mid range, it's a little concerning right now for me.
I thought it was interesting that they gave up on Davion Mitchell because I thought even though he was a flawed player, it gave them a different punch. You know, you throw Davion
Yeah.
Mitchell in the game, he can kind of muck it up, guard, you know, one of the scoring guards that's giving you trouble. You know, just for, you know, a 5 little minute stretch. You don't have to play him a ton of minutes, but that was interesting. And it, you know, kind of hurt their depth. They didn't really replace him.
They
I
didn't
don't know.
replace him
Well,
with
it was
it.
supposed to be yeah, I really like Keon Ellis. I thought he was going to kind of provide that with maybe a little better shooting, and then he got a DMP last night.
Dude, in that Timberwolves game, like, so when I was laughing in the group at the thing that he did that got him quickly pulled, it was like in the late in the third quarter. The Kings they were in control for most of the game against the Timberwolves, and the Timberwolves had battled back late in the third. It's like a flip flop game at this point, and the Timberwolves turn it over. Keon Ellis gets it, and he gets it on the Timberwolves side of the court. So he can either just pull it out, find a guard to set the offense up, or I think he had a shooter on the right wing because most of the Timberwolves players were in the paint. Instead of doing either one of those options, he tries to like Leroy Jenkins run into the paint against 3 guys, throw up a wild floater. It hit nothing at all. And it looked like maybe De'Aaron Fox or Mike Brown was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "What do you want me to do? I don't know." It was just, I was like, "Oh, this guy's he's a little goofy. I see why he doesn't play more." What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Not built for the
Yeah.
moment.
He's definitely a role player that should, like we always talk about, be like doing 2 things, like spotting up and picking up full court. And it's like anything past that is like, oh man, let's just chill a little bit. But speaking of Kings guards, we've talked about him a little bit. We just have to get into it. Malik Monk is so awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Still
that
awesome.
dude is so good.
Yeah. He competes hard.
Yes, yeah, because like he's very skinny. Like you can attack him on defense. It's not going to be because he's not trying.
Yeah.
Like that dude gets after it, and he's going to compete. He's going to try and take charges. I mean, it was the Minnesota game. I think it was. I want to say he drew an offensive foul on Ant. Something happened between him and Ant, and they were just both yelling in each other's faces. I was like, this is amazing. This is the best. And Monk, I just not to yearn for what is not, but gosh, I wish Orlando or somebody would have signed him to be like a number 1 guard creator, not like creator on the whole team, but I just feel like, I mean, he's awesome in this bench role, but I just feel like he could do even more. And also his agent needs to be fired because him on that discount he gave Sacramento is crazy.
Right. And they need him. Like he should got paid more because of how badly they need him. I'm not taking a discount. That's crazy. Yeah, he's got to fire his agent. He's got Dante DiVincenzo's agent.
Yeah, honestly, that I wish we had time to look at those. That'd be hilarious. It was actually the same guy.
That guy's just out there trying to get people unpaid. He just works for the sleeper cell for the league.
Yeah, exactly. The owners actually commission him. But yeah, Monk, I just like. I mean, I feel like we actually talk about Monk a good bit on this show. But the passing, the pull up shooting, the drives, he's so athletic in transition. He just
Yeah.
like floats to the basket. I just so impressed. Did you guys catch much of Keegan Murray? I thought I liked what I saw, but I haven't seen like a ton of changes to his game. Just kind of still more spot up stuff.
I
Did you guys
fear
see
that Keegan
anything?
Murray is definitely gonna. I don't see in him a desire to get better at
Bro,
basketball,
yes.
which I think he's solid. Like I think if you come into the league and you're good with being a role player, that's perfectly fine. Like a lot of guys come in, they say these are the two things I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do them really well. But as a player that was picked as high as he was, and for the potential I think we all saw in him, I'm still waiting to see him really want to do that. And I know last season it was a big conversation with Coach Mike around making Keegan Murray, fight harder to be a better basketball player, and really want more for himself and the ability to do more with the ball. And I just don't see it. And if he wants to be just a guy who gets to go out there, play defense, and shoot threes, that's perfectly fine. But I think it's only slightly disappointing because I think we all expected him to be able to take another step, which he's got plenty of years to do so. But his approach to the game doesn't seem conducive to taking that leap, if that makes sense. What are you thinking, Caelan?
Yeah, no, that's funny, but I do agree. It could be completely unfair because he's kind of like a stoic, kind of quiet dude. So
That
it could be
too,
unfair
yeah.
that we're putting that on him. But that's literally how I feel as well. Like I feel you. Like he just seems like he
He's
just
just out
is.
there chilling, man.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna just shoot these threes. I play some defense. That's fine. Which
Yeah,
kind of is.
yeah, and Kaylin, like you said, like it might be him being a team player. Like he might just not be a guy that's like going to get mad about being
Mhm.
turned into Harrison Barnes because it really seems like the coaching staff is like, "Hey, man, we just need you to be Harrison but better." And
Ugh.
he's like, "Do you want me to do anything else?" They're like, "Nah, that's all." It's like
Well, I
okay,
feel like it's the reverse. Is I guess my feeling is that the coach is like, "Hey, man, we'd love to be able to, develop your game past Harrison Barnes," and he's like, "I'm okay. Like this is good for me. Harrison Barnes is pretty
Harrison's a
cool.
solid player.
made
He's
a
a
lot of
solid
money.
player, made a lot of money. Like I know where my bread is buttered. This is
NBA
fine."
Finals.
Yeah,
And the Kings for sure could use him to be a bit better. Like they
yeah,
would really love for that, but I don't know
yeah,
if it's just going to be in the cards. Nothing
yeah.
wrong
It's
with that type of career, though.
No, and it's tough too. Like they're asking him to be like their stopper right now, which like
Mhm.
that's overtasking Keegan Murray. Like he shouldn't
Yeah,
be guarding the best wing every night. But you definitely saw that. It sounds like we almost all watched the Minnesota games. We can talk some Wolves too if you guys want to.
hmm
But to me, like Randall had a huge game in that one. I think he had over 30
yeah,
points, and it was just
Mhm.
because like you look at this roster, it's like who matches up well with Julius Randall? Like I mean, he was bullying everybody. And it's like,
yeah.
DeMar, we know what DeMar is on defense. Like he's, he'll be in the right spot, but he's not going to provide a lot of resistance. And Keegan Murray's too small. You definitely can't put a big guy on him. Can't put like Sabonis or Lyles. So Randall, I mean, he had a lot of threes too. I mean, that's kind of just some nights Randall just gets hot and that's all you
Yeah,
can
it's
do about
crazy.
it. But yeah,
hmm
to be a 31% 3-point shooter, like the nights he's on, it tricks you to thinking
He
he is a
takes
lot
difficult
better.
threes when he's on, and they go
Yeah.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Heat have definitely experienced that several times over the years. So, but yeah, Randall was balling in that one, and it was fun to watch him kind of just be like, oh yeah, there's no one in a purple jersey that can do anything with me. Like,
I thought it was good to see because of all the jokes that people made at Julius's expense. When you look at the roster, they actually need him to ISO a lot of the times because
mhm.
the offense is Anthony Edwards, and you look around, it's like who else is going to get their own shot on this team? And
Yeah,
Anthony is not the best like creator for others. He can do some of it, but
hmm
like where he is in this game, he needs Randall to have a 30-point game.
Which
yeah,
is my general feeling towards the Timberwolves right now is that looking just from a very small sample size, I love the trade so far. Like I think
Really,
Randall as like a creator is something that Cat was obviously a shot maker. Like Cat can make shots, but if you replace him with someone who can do half of his job, but can also create on ball. Like they could never really give Cat the ball and say, "Hey, go crazy." When Ant, has been decides to lock in on both sides of the ball and he's exhausted, and he's like, "I'm going to play defense on the best player they have, and I'm also going to try to do what I can on offense, but I really need somebody else to step up." Julius Randle will gladly take those shots. Is he going to be the most efficient throughout the season? Probably not. Is he going to regress to the mean from the 3-point shooting? Absolutely. But just a guy that really can bring that energy, and as he gets more comfortable, really like does the one thing that they don't have anybody else to do, and he's doing it pretty well so far. I really like that pickup and the combined having Dante DiVincenzo there. Those two pickups I think are a really valuable replacement for Karl Anthony Towns, and I am pretty happy with the results so far. And I know that I was not as excited about Randall being there because I'm just not really big on him, but he seems more personality wise comfortable in this space with them. And I think Ant does a great job of bringing the best out of people on this team. Like he really lets them feel comfortable being themselves. And him just kind of molding into the idea that this is Ant's team and he's just kind of a part of it. I think that does some things. I've seen some like not post game, but like mid game mic'd up moments where Julius Randle's just like, get Ant the ball. Like that's the offense. Like everybody move and give Ant the ball right now. And so his ability to defer in that way, I think is probably something leaving New York kind of had a positive effect on his ego, and kind of being in a more uncomfortable space has allowed him to be a better team player, despite that first game where he's kind of walking around and he's still not great at crashing the boards. But otherwise, I'm excited for the way this team looks. Caelan, what are your thoughts on the Timberwolves? You feel like
I would definitely go the other way, Lean.
yeah.
Listen, their ceiling is lower. There's no doubt in my mind for me. They have a lower ceiling. Like the team is fine. They're gonna win some basketball games. But they have a lower ceiling. I hear you on the Julius Randle being a guy you like more in ISO than Cat, but Cat had already been working to the offense. Like he is a play finisher, but they knew how to finish plays with him. Like they had already worked that
Mhm.
stuff in. And I think when you do work it in the way that they had, you can be more successful. Like this team just made the conference finals, so you really only want to go higher. And I don't think they do that with Julius. And I think we got too high on the Dante DiVincenzo stuff. He's a fine player. He's nice to have. He's not going to move the needle for them. What do you think, Micah?
Yeah, I think you can look at it two ways. I think this team probably got better in the regular season, and they probably got a little worse in the postseason, just because that's
Mm,
more about your top end talent. And I think Cat's better than Randall and a better fit. But
yeah.
you saw even in that Kings game, they just have so many options for closing lineups. Like if they want extra shooting, like they did in that game, they closed with Dante over McDaniels because they weren't really
Mhm.
worried about defense. They let Ant take on, I think it was the Fox assignment, and then you have Conley and Dante out there. If you need extra defense, you can go with Dante over over Conley, or you could even just go with Nikhil Alexander Walker over both of them, who has been awesome to start the year. I'm a big fan of Nikhil Alexander Walker. So night to night regular season depth, I think we could see that be just as beneficial as Towns' presence. But playoff wise, when teams are scouting for you and can really take advantage of how limited the spacing is now, I think it's going to be tough. I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota's able to get a top 4 seed, but then I also wouldn't be shocked if they lost in the first round, I guess is how
Yeah.
succinctly I would kind of,
Is it
that's my thoughts on
are,
Minnesota.
are either one of you guys a little down on Jaden McDaniels, or is that me? I almost feel like because Nikhil Alexander Walker is such a competitor on the defensive end, it's almost like
Mhm.
he gives you like a lot of what Jaden does, but he's way better on offense. Kind of just
Yeah.
It's nice to have both, but I do feel just through, again, small sample size, but something about I feel like sometimes it takes 3 quarters for Jaden McDaniels to decide he's going to be serious about playing this game and try to do
yeah.
things to help the team win. And sometimes it's too late. And uh, he's just not as consistent as you'd want him to be.
Yeah.
And he really, I feel like, isn't as great of a defender as he can be. I don't think he's always locked in. Like there
Hmm.
always seems to have to be a lock in moment with him and Ant, and it's like, okay, I get it. That's how some competitors are, but you would wish that, and we feel this way about Jimmy sometimes. Like he'll kind of wait a while. His feels a little bit more strategic in that he's trying to get other people going. And he's still locked in on defense. Whereas with Ant and Jaden McDaniels, sometimes it's like, okay, it's the fourth quarter, and now you guys decide you want to play your best defense. Like we probably could have been doing this the whole game, and things would be better. And so we'll see. I think that's maybe more of a question about his engine. Like I don't know if he has that much of a great like basketball engine and the desire to just go hard out there for 4 games or for 4 quarters, but yeah, it's been weird so far this season. Something I'll definitely be keeping an eye on.
And I feel like the Randall trade probably hurts him too, because
Mm.
now there's even less space to operate. So if Jaden McDaniels spent his whole offseason working on driving to the basket, I don't think we would know it right now because it's so cramped in there. And so really the Randall trade, or acquiring Randall, puts more emphasis on McDaniels to just be a knockdown spot up shooter, which he really isn't. He can make open corner ones, but that limits it. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker right now, he's working on, I think, his third straight year at 40% from three. So like you were saying, Caelan, I mean, he's a little smaller than McDaniels, but
Yeah.
he can do so much of what he does. And some nights that's awesome because you can throw both out there and go crazy. But in some matchups, it'll hurt you. So the other Minnesota thing I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on. So in the preseason, Anthony Edwards was taking like 11 threes per 36 minutes. And I was like, that's weird, but it's the preseason, whatever. Do you guys know who's leading the NBA in 3-point attempts a game right now?
Oh no.
That's crazy.
He's 54% of all of Edwards' shots are threes.
Oh, that's bad. I don't like that.
Over half.
That's
He's
bad.
taking 18% of his shots at the rim.
Oh no, that's awful. Oh, that's very bad.
Know.
That's very
I
bad.
know.
Like
I
Steph
don't
Curry
understand.
numbers.
I don't understand what's
13
happening.
threes a game right now, or 13 3-point attempts a game right now.
Oh wow,
13 a game.
That's
And we're
insane.
only 3 in, but again, we have these 3 plus the preseason. He is chucking it. And Minnesota's like top 3 in the league in 3-point frequency, which like that would be cool, but it's because their best player is taking so many rim attempts away just to jack up threes. And he's shooting 38% right now. Like they're going in, which is awesome. But this, you're too special of a downhill athlete to take that many threes a game. Like the Minnesota offense looks its best when Ant is able to drive, kick, and start creating for other guys. Taking pull-up threes in the pick and roll, like that doesn't help anyone else. Like, you're making them right now, so that's great. So anyway, that's just something I want to monitor, because I was watching this Kings game in the first half, so you guys saw, it's like, man, Ant's not even that involved. And then the second half, he kind of got going to the basket a little more, but still so many pull-up threes. It was jarring to see.
Yeah, I mean, in that Kings game, I mean, both him and Randall in that game against the Kings did some like impressive hero time stuff. They made some tough buckets to get that win, and that's good. I mean, listen, it's stack wins. That's the name of the game. But you do got to think about the long term. Anthony Edwards, well, I mean, you said it. He's just too special of an athlete. That's one of his things, is he's too athletic to be able to keep him from getting where he wants to go, and he's got a. I know everyone's out on mid range. He's got a pretty decent mid range. Just work it into the game. You don't have to fall in love with it, but I do believe if you have a good mid range pull up, you should work it into your offense a little bit. Obviously, what do you say? 18% of the rim, not good enough. So yeah, he's got to kind of level that out a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch, because Ant's so confident. I'm sure he's just like, oh, I'm Steph Curry. Like I can do this.
I guess I'll just be Steph Curry this season.
Yeah, and I get from his perspective, it's like, man, every time I drive, there's 4 bodies in the lane. Like I don't want to do that, but you got to, man. You got to just like get to the line, crash into guys. Like,
what's funny is though, I think we all kind of agree that the spacing got worse with Randall being out there because he's not as consistent as a shooter as Cat was. But I feel like in the conversations and like post-game interviews and preseason interviews that we got from Ant, he seemed okay, or at least happy to have not 2 centers on the floor. Like I thought he seemed pretty interested in the fact that Julius Randle is actually a power forward who can play from, the 3-point line, and guys don't necessarily need to get out and guard him, like deny him the ball at the 3, but they do have to go out there and defend him because he will shoot it, or he will use that downhill momentum if you give him space. And I feel like in Ant's head, he has more spacing, but is still shooting more threes. And so I don't know. You guys are right. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. As far as I feel like we've talked a lot about teams we're excited about besides our maybe our own teams. But how are you guys feeling? Are there any teams you guys are super worried about right
Oh yeah.
now? Besides, I
Oh
I
yeah.
have one, but I want to hear Kalen's
This is
first.
my time to shine. This is what I do. I criticize. No, man, but the Milwaukee Bucks do. I gotta do it. I'm pretty sure I talked about the Milwaukee Bucks in our first episode that we did after the season started last season. And I
We're
can't remember
back,
if I broke
baby.
down the Hawks game or a Raptors game or probably both because they lost to both of those teams early on, and it was to the same things. Dennis Schroeder for the Raptors was shredding them up, and then Trae Young for the Hawks is shredding them. This year, no different. They lose to the Bucks. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Kobe White aggressively hunting triples. That's got to be in their scouting report at this point. Is to just go at Dame. I put in the Discord that I'm just out on Dame. He's not giving enough. He's not giving enough offensively to make up for the defense, and the defense is not overstated. It's terrible. It's terrible,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at the point. We talk about reputation in this league. I remember when Rondo was playing for the Lakers at the end of his career. And you guys remember, if Rondo was just left wide open at that point in time, he would definitely nail a three at a decent rate, but he still had zero gravity because he's just not being respected in that way. It's the same thing for like bad defenders. When you're a bad defender, people just get confident against you. I saw this like early on in like Austin Reeves' career. Like people would just score on him because they felt
Mm-hmm.
better about themselves, and that's how it is with Dame. Like guys just shred him, and they have to hide this guy every time down the court. They try to. Obviously, you're going to still try and get Dame into actions, and it's just tough because they don't have the personnel. Like they're starting Torian Prince. Good luck. The Lakers tried that last year with Darvin Ham. He's not a starting player. He's a fine player, but he's not a starting caliber player. That's a big mistake. He can't guard the guys you need him to guard. Gary Trent Jr. is not going to be able to guard the guys you need him to guard because you're trying to hide Dame. They don't have Chris Middleton yet, and I don't think he's going to help on that end. They have the same issue. This is not a Doc Rivers issue. It sucks because Doc Rivers has already used up all his excuses. He used them all, and he used some of his extras. So he can't say this isn't his fault, but it's not his fault. This team is not constructed properly, and it's so unfortunate. That's why Giannis is still hinting that he's going to leave. Like he has not stopped doing that.
He's filthy for that too, by the
He
way. It's
sees the
not
writing on the
cute. It's
wall. The
not
team can't
demure at all.
guard, and he's frustrated. Like watching him, I don't know if it was on him or on Brook Lopez, who was supposed to guard Vucevic. Nobody tried. It just felt like there were so many leaks on defense. Giannis is like, whatever, bro. Like I can't plug all these leaks. I'm gonna have to score on the other end anyway, or we're gonna lose. So whatever.
Yeah.
He can just shoot it, and it's tough, man. They don't have the tools. I don't know what they do.
Yeah, and
It's
like you
rough.
said, like with Lopez especially, like he kept them just from being horrific last year on defense. If he takes a step back at all, then it's really just
He
Giannis
doesn't want
trying
to
to
move.
do everything.
He
Yeah,
can't.
so
He might want to, but he can't.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And the offense, like they obviously have some offensive weapons there and their two best players, but when Dame isn't hitting shots, when you're
Oh
down
God.
and you're losing, they look worse than any other player that maybe besides LaMelo Ball that other players like when they miss shots, it's like, make or miss league, whatever. This happens. When they miss, or even to Micah's credit, watching Wimby kind of take some really early shot clock random jumpers sometimes. Like when you have an offense built on early shot clock, random chucked shots from really deep, if those shots aren't going in, it looks so bad. It's like, what are you doing out there? This is not offense. You just grabbed the ball and then chucked it from the spot you picked it up at. Like, there's no advantage creation. There's no moving the ball around. And so that looks so much worse when they are not firing off on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? Maybe. And Dame had a pretty good. His first game was pretty good. He scored pretty well. I feel like. But the last two have been not so
They were playing
not so
that
productive.
beat up Sixers team. I don't even count that. Like,
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
not a lot of
it's-
defenders there.
It's 2 games, but right now Milwaukee's 6th in offense and 21st in defense, and that's about what it was last year. It
Yeah.
feels like you're saying, Caelan. It's like, yeah, we're doing this again. And
yes,
I think Gary Trent Jr., DeLon Wright, Torian Prince, slightly better role players than they had last year, but not enough to make a huge difference. So we'll see. I mean, Milwaukee's offense is probably going to be awesome all year, but it might be kind of like a 2023 Kings situation where they need to be healthy and awesome on offense every single night to have like an above, to be in the top 4 in the East.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, let's see. Do you guys have any other teams you're really hoping to get into? I'm sure we'll do a little Heat Lakers talk at the end. So I wanted to make sure if there's any other non-Homer teams. This is just a random aside. Right now, Boston, 50% of their shots are coming from 3 as a team, and they're making 50% of them.
Awesome.
Boston is not chucking. They're just beating the man and swing.
They're good shots.
They're good shots.
They're good shots.
Open.
I don't know what to tell you. You want them to not take open shots? They're good.
Boston looks incredible. Tatum looks incredible.
Tatum's shot looks really good this season.
Yep.
You owe Drew Hanlon an apology, by the way.
I will never apologize to Drew Hanlon. You can never make me
that
do
boy
that.
playing right. I think the only other team I'm concerned about that we should talk about are the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I knew it. Yeah,
we got to.
We should go there. They don't have any good basketball players, and that's typically a problem.
Wait, hold on. let's not destroy all our credibility from the jump.
Generally speaking, not to over-exaggerate, not to overreact, but there's only 1, maybe 2 good basketball players on this team now. I don't know what happened, but they got to figure things out. The shooting has been very poor, and Jokic has talked a lot about that, and that makes it very difficult. But I just don't exactly understand this roster construction at this point after a finals appearance or like winning a championship. Since then, the decisions for how they were going to keep this thing going and run it back, it just, I don't know. They have not replaced talent with equal or better talent. And so 2 years down the line, they look worse. And so that feels pretty natural. It's not super surprising to me, but what are you guys thinking? How do the Nuggets turn this thing around?
Feeling very Masai Ujiri-ish over there in Denver. Just want to ring, rest on our laurels. We'll talk some shit, and then we'll just kind of fade away into obscurity because they're not even trying over there. What players are you bringing in? Russell Westbrook. I'm so glad this is failing for them. I'm sorry. I have to feed off of this negative energy. I mean, duh. I really feel like people just don't respect the Lakers.
Is crazy.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like people think the Lakers are incompetent, and like 80% of the time they are. But there's like this certain percentage of the time where they just correct their mistakes. And Russ was a mistake. And I think other teams in the league just think the Lakers are dumb and they couldn't figure it out. Well, good luck with that. I hope that works out well. He cannot shoot, and he's not an off-ball player. This isn't hard. It's really not. If I'm building on Jokic, I want guys who are smart and can play off-ball because that's what you're going to be doing when you have Jokic, and then they also have Jamal Murray, I think some of the Jamal Murray stuff's a little overblown. He's probably going to be fine. But the shooting is a big issue. It's hard to kind of see how they correct that, and Russ stinks, like I said. So there.
Man, yeah, it is a tough watch. I watched Denver and OKC, watched that game, and like 90% of my notes are about how great Oklahoma City looked. So I do want to say, at least in that one, they were playing an awesome team.
Yeah, for sure.
But man, there is some worrisome stuff going on because it's the bench is as bad as we all thought it was probably going to be. Obviously, the Russ thing isn't going well, but Strother, Peyton Watson, those guys haven't really been able to pop.
No.
And then, this is the only Denver game I've watched so far, so I can't speak to everything, but it seems like MPJ is off to a really rough start. Murray's been up and down, and so it's, Jokic is awesome, but it feels like we're getting closer to almost. It feels kind of similar to that year MPJ and Murray were out, and it's like, man, Jokic is just dragging these guys with him, like trying to elevate an average-ish roster, which we know this team can be better than that, but Aaron Gordon doesn't look as explosive anymore, and so Christian Brown I thought has actually looked pretty good other than the shooting. Like I loved his drives in that Oklahoma City game. I think that honestly was like such a huge worry for everyone, and it's probably been the least worrisome thing as far as
Christian Brown's been good. They need 4 more of him, and they'd be probably fine. But
exactly.
they only have 1 of him.
And Saric, like that's not really working right now. The Westbrook bench units aren't working, so yeah, it's worrisome. I mean, there's definitely stuff to clean up. They have the best player in the world, so they'll probably somehow still get to like a top 4 seed. But it's scary right now. They definitely need to they need to right the ship. I don't want to get into like transaction talk already, but they need to figure some stuff out.
I just love to see people talk themselves into cutting. I love it. Westbrook, he's a cutter. You know what? Jokic, he gonna be down on the guts. Okay, he's a cutter.
That's honestly a great call by you. I think that's one of the most like you have it or you don't qualities in a basketball player, because it's spatial awareness. It's like in timing, and if you haven't looked for that your whole life because you've had the ball in your hands your whole life, like it's just very rare. Dwayne Wade was a very good cutter for like a dominant on-ball player. That's very rare, and it's just not common. So yeah, you made a great point. Like Russ and Jokic, which they don't play a ton together anyway, but that pairing does not look great right now.
You can't pair Russ with anybody. He's just not good. It's not about the pairing. He stinks.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, is it's something Jokic wanted. That was reported that he like really liked the idea.
Professional athletes like names. That's what they like.
Yeah. And I mean, I like Russ's energy. I think locker room wise he'll be good for the team, but it's hard when you're like, oh man, I appreciate that, man. Can you play better? Like like I appreciate your advice. Can you make shots? It's got to be a tough conversation.
Who is even talking like that? Is that
Christian Brown?
Christian Brown's like, look, man, I really appreciate all you've done as a mentor, but dude, can you make some fucking buckets, please?
Yeah. Oh man, new headphones for the locker room. Appreciate that, bro. How about 3 less turnovers this game?
Have you been working on your free throws? Oh man,
holy cow!
I think some good. If maybe they're not this bad of a shooting team. Obviously, Russell Westbrook's really the only one on the team that I believe can't shoot better. I think everybody else that's shooting poorly right now probably could get back to a more average shooting, and things could turn around for them. Yeah, like MPJ, the number 1 suspect there as far as who can actually play better than he is right now. And so he can get there. And so this team could be fine. They could just be off to a slow start, but right now it's pretty concerning. I think that's good for concerning teams, though. You guys ready to get into the magical part of this episode?
All right, Caelan, as the person wearing the jersey, you got to start. Tell us about your Los Angeles Lakers, 3-0. One of the like only 5 or 6 undefeated teams in the league. What have you seen so far?
Okay, so this is the official overreaction segment, right?
Yes, we're in the overreaction segment.
Okay, the Lakers are the best team in the NBA.
All right, we're here.
Win the NBA Finals and their second NBA Cup, back-to-back NBA Cup champions.
Back to back.
No, man, the Lakers have been awesome, man. I definitely got to admit that, I had them like 10th, and I tried to push them up a little bit, but definitely did not think that they would be a good team, and they look good, man. I got to say that they do look good. They look like, let's say a top probably 5-4-ish team. Obviously, it's early, but that's just kind of how they play. Their processes all look good. LeBron has not lost a step somehow. So that's awesome. AD looks like he has embraced the mantra as, I am the number 1 option. So that's been positive. Rui Hachimura, I'm telling you guys, he's the best he's ever been. Like, oh, man. He has worked on his game, not just this offseason, but for several off seasons. He's been grinding, and it looks like he is going to be enjoying the fruit of his labor. he drilled like a 25-footer above the break, and he's a guy who shoots a lot of corner threes, maybe a wing three. Sometimes I really think that those above the break triples can be tough, especially if you're a step or two back. And he just drilled it, man. That guy looks comfortable shooting the ball this year. The first shot of the season was a Rui three over an outstretched hand of whoever was trying to guard him, and he drilled it. Like, Rui looks really good. AR, oh my God, AR looks really good. I
Oh
mean,
man.
he just looks so comfortable. Like, he's just not worried about anything. He looks very comfortable playing with Braun, and he feels like a vet this year, I think, and he feels like he's talking in the locker room. They do have some younger players now, so he's been doing some talking, and that's been good. Dalton Connect is a real NBA player. Who's going to help us.
Real guy.
Yeah, like, he's actually going to help this team this season. So that was fun. His favorite player is KD, and he drilled that triple on the right wing, right in KD's face. And after the game, he got a signed KD jersey. It just felt like he had earned it, like by hitting that triple in his face. And KD respected it. KD likes those kind of things. So it's hard not to get too excited about this team, man. They are really good. Gabe Vincent hit a three in the first game. Holy cow, Gabe Vincent hit a three. That's a great sign. So
He likes him.
just want to get the guys healthy, man. Want to see how Vanderbilt looks, and maybe even Christian Wood, who's a great theoretical player, but always a bad actual player. Maybe he'll be.
I
Yeah.
think those guys will definitely add depth for sure,
Yes,
though.
yes.
So even if they don't really. It'd be even maybe ideal that they don't mess up kind of the lineup right now, and then you can go to them in some bench minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. I do want to remind people of the record that I was high on the Lakers
You were.
going into
Lino
this
did call it.
season. Yeah, and so this team, I think the things that needed to go right happened so far.
Yes.
They're starting off right. Anthony Davis being the best player on the team and being one of the best players in the league, like we all know he is, and continuing the dominance that he showed in the Olympics. Rui Hachimura
Oh
as a
man.
development is game changing. That guy, his rim pressure and his ability to, just have moments where he can have the ball and make something happen in like
Yep.
a late shot clock situations
Yep.
is so crucial for plays that don't work out. Austin Reeves, it feels too good to be true the way that Austin Reeves is playing right now, and so part of me is like, okay, he probably is going to regress a bit as maybe the league
It's been
adjusts,
awesome.
but
It's so good.
it's freaking awesome right now. He will take anybody off the dribble. Like, if you are not like the greatest defender, he does not care. Like, he will take you to the rim and get a pretty good look at the rim too, and that's been awesome. Like, his ability to kind of create, whether that and his ability to manage the pick and roll outside of like LeBron James. Like, he's doing pick and roll with Jackson Hayes. He's doing pick and roll with AD, with Rui. Like, they are getting a lot of really good looks generated from him being on ball. And then obviously off ball, he's still super, super active. And so that's just a great basketball player to have. But the other thing is that JJ Redick is running a tight ship. Like, I think my one concern about JJ Redick's offense is that it is kind of dependent on some really complex passes sometimes. Like the actions they run really require the ball handler to thread the needle pretty aggressively sometimes, and I don't know if that's just going to work all season. But right now, it's created some really cool offensive flow and some really productive offensive actions, and so I think this team, all the thing, and you're like you said, guys like Dalton Connect being real basketball players. I like the Jackson Hayes minutes. I think some people are kind of in
Dude.
or out, and I don't know if he's like,
Oh,
I don't know,
he's been okay. He hasn't.
he's like
I have
he's
not
like
screamed at Jackson Hayes once.
that's the biggest difference is that this team seems so much like it's almost the exact same team, but everybody plays in a way that it seems like they know their role and they feel comfortable doing what they do. Nobody's just kind of out there meandering, like just kind of confused about what they're supposed to be doing. Everybody's moving, everybody's got a role, and everybody is like playing it to the T. So super excited. Hopefully they can keep this up. And of course, LeBron James
Dude.
is just a real monster still. Like, the league
Unbelievable.
is going to have a conversation with him like, hey, buddy, we really appreciate you being the best basketball player in the league for like 20 years now, but we really got to start building up some of these
We
other
gotta
guys.
move
And
on.
if you're
We
going to
gotta move
continue
on.
playing like this, if you're going to keep playing like this for the next 3 years, like we're going to have to have a conversation because it's going to start to be difficult for anybody else to be known in the league. So, Micah, what do you think about the Lakers so far?
You guys hit on most of it. I think JJ Redick's doing an awesome job, and I think the 3-0 start is really important for that. You know, he put in a lot of new stuff on offense, and
Mm-hmm.
if all these shots weren't going in, guys would start being like, well, we're probably just going to do what we're used to. Like, we don't really think what you're doing is working. So to get off to a hot start is so important for a rookie head coach. And it's not a coincidence. I mean, I think what he's doing is really elevating the quality of play of everyone on the roster. Yeah, so I'm super impressed. Everybody's shooting well from three right now. Everybody's working hard on defense. So I think it's all stock up in Laker land, and definitely a ton to be excited about.
Yeah, just
Yeah, I thought
one quick thing, real quick. They did switch back to 4 out, 1 in. They do run a lot of stuff through AD, which is good to see. But they last year they were doing a 5 out system, which is kind of tough. So they're back to the 4 out, 1 in. I think it's like more suited for this team.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to buy into JJ's system so far, just from what I've seen, because everybody kind of gets a shot. Like it's not a situation where, yeah, we drew up a play for you, but that play was you sit in the corner and wait for AD or LeBron to get you open. Like a lot of these plays really allow guys to get involved and
Mm-hmm.
get themselves open and then get a really good look at the
A lot of
rim or a
motion.
really open shot. And so that kind of stuff is, I think, easier to buy in because even if you miss the shot, it's like, well, that was on me. Like this was all drawn up to allow me a perfect lane to the rim or an open three. So, it just seems like JJ's got a lot of buy-in from this team, and they're firing off on all cylinders. So hopefully they can keep it up. Some guys are probably performing above the level, but if they can maintain that, and if they can get to this in the postseason, it's gonna be a very special year for the Lakers.
No, definitely. Well, speaking of new look offenses, Lino, not a ton of time left, but what do you thought about Miami lately?
I am still optimistic about our year. There's a lot to
Okay.
be excited about, and I think there is some things that I'm less like they're concerning, but I'm really not that concerned about because of who they involve. The exciting thing is that Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero seem to have like had this Vegito level like combination where they almost seem like best friends on the court. Like when you look at it and you're like, this feels like a buddy cop movie with two guys. Like this is pretty much just white men don't jump, but different. And these guys just are really meshing well and being productive and making some crucial shots and being super active on defense. Are they
Mhm.
defensive stalwarts? No, not necessarily, but they're also like this reputation that Tyler might have garnered for himself over his whole career of being a very poor defender. I think this season he's showing that he can be much better than he's been in the past. And their active hands in the passing lanes, they've been working on that clearly because they get a lot of takeaways and generate a lot of turnovers that way. And the transition offense looks awesome. What doesn't look awesome is Bam's involvement on the offense and Jimmy's deferments are still exists. Like he's still deferring a lot. Bam still deferring a lot. And some of it kind of feels like it's on Spo is that the offense doesn't seem to be tailored to getting them looks. Like it seems to be really trying to get Terry and Tyler going, which has worked out for them, I think, for the most part, besides the back half of the Orlando game. Like the first half and the second half of the Orlando game felt like two different games for us. And I think, when we can get Bam and Jimmy back to their normal productivity levels, then I think we're going to be perfectly fine. And everything else about our game feels pretty clean right now. So overall, I'm feeling excited. But Micah, how did you feel after these first two games? And what's standing out to you right now?
Yeah, I feel good overall. High points, Hero is probably the person I've been most impressed with so far. Just a ton of defensive intensity from him, and
Mhm.
he's trying to make plays in the passing lanes. He's getting a ton of deflection, stuff he can control. He can't make his arms longer, he can't be bigger, but he can play with a ton of activity and effort. And he's really doing that right now. So appreciate that from him. And then I've loved his decision making on offense. He's taken a lot more catch and shoot shots. He's flowing into more, the Klay Thompson, Duncan Robinson kind of spots. And he can get into pick and rolls from there off the catch. But I love that he's not demanding to pound the ball, to dribble up. And I think he's at like 18, 5 and 4, 40% from three. So just, doing everything you'd want. Jimmy looked awesome against Charlotte. That's a good matchup for him. He usually kills Charlotte, but still, it's good to see him have a bounce back game. And yeah, I thought the first half of the Orlando game, really the whole Orlando game, the new look offense to me went too far with emphasis on spacing,
Mhm.
because the idea is, Jimmy and Bam are non-shooters, but we're going to space them anyway and hope they can make enough to make the defense pay. But there were a lot of situations where both of them were in the corner, and it was like a Terry Rozier, Niko Jovic pick and roll. And to me, one of them being in the corner while the other one's in the action is the sweet spot. So I don't love the idea of both of them being PJ Tucker on a possession. But if we can get, like Jimmy set a bunch of ball screens in the Charlotte matchup, and that got him
Mhm.
mismatches. I just thought that was awesome. So stuff like that would be great going forward. And, Bam did more of his post hub, look over the top of the defense, try and make plays. So I think I hope they'll find a good middle ground between a little more spacing and a little more of what they did last year, where their best two players are comfortable. So also the amount of hammer screens / pin and screens from Miami. If you guys just want something fun to monitor, like a drinking game, just watch every time somebody sets a screen to set up a pin in corner three. It's hilarious. Like every single kick to the corner, Jaime Jaquez is like jostling with somebody with like Terry Rozier, Alec Burks behind him. So
Hey,
that's
Terry and
definitely an
Alec got a
emphasis.
ton of great looks from that though, and Alec
Yeah,
Burks
no,
looks
it's
kind of
important.
nice. He's
Yeah, they're
like he's
generating good
getting
corner threes.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys for listening. This was a ton of fun. We're going to be bringing you episodes every week, talking about all kinds of different games. I had Suns and Clippers notes, and there's too much basketball to talk about. So we'll be coming to you guys every week. If you have any questions or anything you've been excited about, please comment on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can send us questions at confidenceirrational@gmail.com. And thank you guys so much for listening. If you haven't already, please follow or subscribe. We're going to have a lot of great content, a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and a lot of enjoy in hoops together. So please check us out. For myself, Micah, my fellow hosts and friends, Lino and Caelan, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.